I think hey, there we go. All right, so there's Selena joining right there. Okay, so the meeting is officially called to order at 4:48 p.m. Let's just go through here and do a roll call. We're just going to go in alphabetical order. Shane Assadandy, I am here. Bob Baker.
Here.
Matt Halterman.
Present and voting.
I just realized this is not alphabetical, but that's okay. Ray Whiting. Not here. Deb McCarthy.
Here.
Maria Russo.
Here.
Judy Stevens.
Here.
And Selena Vickers.
Here.
All right, 7 of 8 members present. That does constitute a quorum. Moving on to minutes and notes from our last meeting, which was February 10th. I will go ahead and screen share these as soon as I pull them up.
Let me just check. Are we?
Oh.
Let me do it this way. Sorry.
Yeah.
Are we on YouTube?
So Selena, we are not currently, because we are currently broadcasting on YouTube, the House public hearing, but the plan is we will record this and then publish it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And
Yeah, I just can't do 2 live streams at once.
Gotcha. Okay. And I don't know if anybody, I think I sent it to you, Shane. Ray said he'd be here around 4:45.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. And then we'll go ahead and let me share screen just so there we go. Okay. So these are the minutes and notes from the February 10th meeting. We have a link to the YouTube, who was present, everything that was discussed in here. It's pretty detailed, but we were having a lot of open discussion, so it was important to get a record of that. Are there any questions or corrections to the minutes as they were presented?
I move that we accept the minutes as they were presented.
All right, motion from Judy to accept the minutes. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Maria. And is there anybody opposed to accepting the minutes? Okay, so hearing no opposition, then we'll just go ahead and ratify those by acclamation. And then we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the election of a secretary for this committee. So at this time, we'll just go ahead and open up nominations for secretary. Nominations, to my understanding, don't have to be seconded, but they do need to be accepted by the person being nominated. Deb?
I would like to nominate Selena Vickers as secretary of our bylaws committee. I think she'll do an excellent job. She's already done an excellent job, so I think she can actually do it. Yeah.
All right, Selena, do you accept the nomination? Selena, are you there?
I'm sorry. I said thank you, Deb, and accepted, but I was muted. I apologize.
You got 2 microphones. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, and I can't. I needed to put these in, and they only work with my phone. So anyway. Yeah.
Okay, but you did accept it then. So
yeah,
all
thank
right,
you.
so nominations submitted and accepted. Are there any further nominations? All right, I'll ask 3 times. Any further nominations? And any further nominations? Okay, hearing no further nominations, nominations are now closed. So I guess we move to, how do we, I guess, discussion, right? So there's a motion on the floor, a nomination, like we go to discussion and then we'll call the vote. So is there any discussion on the motion at hand?
Thank you. Selena.
Okay, it's hearing no discussion, then we'll just proceed directly, or let me ask this, is there any opposition to Selena serving as secretary of this committee? All right, hearing no opposition, then we'll just go ahead and call that by acclamation. And Selena, congratulations. Thank you for stepping up to do it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Next up, we have rules of procedure here. So I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry, did I hear discussion? Okay. let me go to rules of procedure here. So these are just rules that we talked about at the last meeting, sort of having like a brief list of standing rules just to ensure like proper order. In addition, obviously, to following like the basic principles of Robert's rules. So we have during public virtual meetings, which are live streamed to the West Virginia Democrats Facebook or YouTube channel, the chat function should be used only to share written motions or links to content in discussion, which will be shared with the public by the chair. The reason for that is, of course, because the chat isn't part of like public viewing or public proceedings. It's basically the equivalent of a side conversation in a meeting. So we're not going to entertain that except for like clerical and technical details. But discussion should be happening through, regular order. For during motions, for discussion on motions, just raise hands and be called upon just so we can have an orderly discussion. But there will also be a lot of times where we have designated open discussion where we're just kind of brainstorming ideas of what we want to see in a particular section, for example, and that doesn't require hand raising or being called on. It's just, everybody just take turns and speak. If we have everybody trying to speak at once, I'll, corral people accordingly, but otherwise that'll be a little more free flowing. Are there any other standing rules or proposed rules of procedure that people would like to submit? Okay, I see, Matt, go ahead.
I don't know how many people here get the National Parliamentarian, but Jim Slaughter did a recent article on electronic meetings, and out of the 30 bevy of ideas that he put in that, I think 29 of them are bad. However, there is one that I think would make a decent standing rule, and that is that a standing rule is that connectivity issues on the part of members is not a substantiated basis to dissolve a vote. That a member who is having connection issues can't overrule the rights of the committee if we make a decision. And I think that should be clearly stated because we are going to speak on some contentious issues, and being from West Virginia, we have a lot of connectivity issues, as this meeting members talked about before we went to session. So I think that having that just in black and white will create a little bit of long-term peace.
Sorry, I was muted there. Can you put because I can't type it. This is a PDF. It's on a Google Doc that I haven't, although I guess I could. Let me rules of procedure here.
I have the original that I can add it to.
There
if
we
you
go.
want me
Yeah,
to.
I don't, it's open with Google Docs. I guess if I do it this way. There we go. Okay, it looks a little broken. But yeah, Matt, can you give us the wording though, so we would insert that as like a number 4?
And Shane,
One moment, I'm typing it up.
Selena, go ahead.
yeah, can you use the percentage and make that bigger? Like make it about a 150 or 200, because it looks very small as we're looking at it.
Well, and it's also this, I'm just gonna go ahead and take out this watermark here.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. Now I can make this even bigger. There we go.
It
All right, so-
returns, so it spreads it out a little.
Do what?
Just separate 1 and 2 by hitting return after chair. That's too far.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, so Mac is getting us the wording for, in fact, I think that might be in the chat now.
If it's in the chat, can you copy it from the chat and paste it right into that?
That's what I was trying to do right there. Well, why won't that let me? Okay, so apparently you can't copy from the chat. That's fun. Issues related to members, technical connectivity will not be a founded basis for a point of order or overturning a vote of the committee. Okay. Other standing rules to be submitted? Okay. So I think what we do then is we just entertain a motion to adopt these, and then with the second, then we can discuss it and then vote accordingly. So was there a motion to adopt these as proposed rules of procedure?
I'll take that motion.
Motion by Mac, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second,
All right, Bob seconded. Discussion on the proposed rules, the motion at hand. Okay, hearing no discussion, then we'll go ahead and proceed directly to the vote. All in favor of adopting these as standing rules, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
That was,
We can put it in the chat too. Well, I guess, no, maybe not the chat. We'll do voice votes. Is there anybody opposed?
And I take it the term founded is like something being well-founded, a well-founded objection.
That's how Jim Slaughter put it. So
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna stick with his wording on this one. Yeah, that would be my assumed assumption, is it's a well-founded basis. Yeah.
Okay, so objections? Any nays? Abstentions? All right, hearing none, then the rules of procedure are hereby adopted. Next on the agenda is the discussion of specific current bylaws identified at last meeting as time sensitive. So let me step back when we stop sharing here and step back to frame that. So at our last meeting, we talked about how, there's a long-term process here where we're going to, sorry about the dogs. But there's a long-term process here where we're going to, create a much different version of a bylaw, sort of a final bylaws. But we also have the current version, which does have some stuff that could really be mediated. And some of the items that we addressed as urgent items that should go in the current bylaws and then be carried over into the newly adopted version was attendance, proxies, the equal division and gender equity, and then subcommittees. And I'm trying to think how the best way to open this up would be, because I have Selena, I have a triage list. We could do that, or what would be the best way for you to, what would be the best way for us to do this discussion that lets you take notes on it appropriately?
well, I think that how they are listed on the agenda, we should just take them one at a time in that order. Now, in the table that I put together, it's not, they're in order of articles and sections. So we'll have to jump around it, but it kind of makes sense to me to just go with the order that they're listed on the agenda.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Now, should I be screen sharing that triage, the bylaws consideration list, or should I screen share the original bylaws? What's the best procedure?
Probably the that table, probably just that table
Okay, so I should go ahead and
on that section.
Okay. So the first one is, let me just grab the list off the agenda. It's attendance and then proxies. So let's start with that because that's sort of one thing anyway. Share screen. Okay, and then where do we have attendance? Right down here.
Yeah, there's not an attendance policy right now, so that would have to be a new article and section. But what I did is I copied and pasted what the DNC bylaws they have for their members. And just so you know, we're not required to have the same policy that they are, because this is specific to DNC members. We could if we wanted to, but I just thought that might be helpful, just to know what their policy is. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to let you guys know is one of the things that we've talked about this is people had been talked about this for years, and the former chair said that we couldn't do it, couldn't have an attendance policy because people were elected. Well, as you know, there's close to 90 some people on the committee, and only 68 of those are elected from the senatorial districts. And so, but I did call the Secretary of State's office and talk to them to ask that I could find nothing in state code that says that you couldn't, remove somebody or put in an attendance policy. There already is a part of the bylaws say that we can remove members, and that the committee itself, it will be the determinators of how to do that, and what the Secretary of State lawyer told his person that told me is that we just follow the bylaws. So there's nothing that in the national bylaws that would prevent us from doing it. There's nothing in state law that I could find that would prevent us from having attendance policy. So I think we're green lighted that we can do it if this is what we choose to do.
So then I think what we probably do is we just, because if we're going with the process, and this is, I think, a good way for us to test our process and see, like, are we doing this in the most efficient, most effective way possible? Because there's 6,000 different ways that we could engage in this process. But if what we kind of talked about last time was we would all just have discussion where we would sort of share our views on what should be in an attendance section. And then once we talk and we have what feels like the most consensus, then we'll charge somebody in this group with drafting that section, or doing the strike and insert to modify an existing section. And we'll then bring that to the bylaws committee on our next meeting, where we can look at it in more detail and then, approve it or reject it at that time. So if that's the model we're going to use, then what I'll do now is just open up the floor to say, what is, and I'd like to hear from everybody on this, what is your view of an attendance policy? Should we do it? Should we not do it? And what would that look like? And Judy, go ahead.
This is a roundabout. It has to do with attendance. Up here, of course, in the bylaws, it says that the meetings must be held in accessible places to all parties, and notice of meetings must be sent by email or regular mail. We have a situation up here where we have an older lady she's one of the charter members of the Wood County DEC. And she's close to 90, but she always attended meetings, her and her husband both. But she's not computer savvy. She doesn't do text or any of that kind of stuff. And she's not getting notifications for meetings. So if we are going to consider, an attendance requirement, I had drafted a letter to send to them stating that they needed to make sure that she was notified, but I haven't sent it yet. What would we do in that situation?
So I think that the way that I imagine us, I don't know that the attendance policy would have to specifically note anything about a member not receiving notification, because elsewhere in the bylaws, proper notification is required. And I'm assuming that we're going to strengthen that language this year to make it that proper note, to clarify the ways you can make a public notice and how many days it needs to be and so on. So I feel like that's kind of already implied, because if a member's not getting a notice, then that's a violation of bylaws, which then they wouldn't be held accountable for not attending a meeting that they didn't know was happening. So that's kind of my interpretation of that. Is I don't think the policy needs to say anything directly about it, but elsewhere in the document, we would address meeting notice requirements.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just my view. I could be wrong. Roundtable discussion. So who wants to chime in on that or anything else? Mac, I saw your hand up earlier.
I'll reserve my point, but I think this is a good moment to think about like the discussion that we are having. I think that making considerations for notices and things is important, but that is a but sometimes. In talking about attendance, we need to look at the general factors that have came up over the last 6 years. And the fact of the matter is we've had members of the state executive committee who got elected, who then proceeded to not attend a single meeting in the entire session. While the but sometimes argument is important for nuance, I think this is something that is important for us to adopt. As a parliamentarian, I'm tempted to say that our policy on attendance should be as similar as possible to the national bylaws. There's this concept that I've talked about in the past called mirroring. It makes an organization more efficient the more often a rule is replicated at different levels of the organization. It allows members who move between levels of the organization to not have to account for every nook and cranny. Things are very similar. They operate very efficiently. And it allows for there to be sort of a set of guidelines and expectations that are modeled. We see this exact rule as it's displayed modeled by the DNC. So there's some precedence in how to handle situations regarding it. I'm sure that they have dealt with issues related to specific members noticing who are older, who might not have the capability of or technical savviness. So I'm sure there is some precedent that we can fall back on as well. And then if we take a similar bylaws approach and then entice or mandate, depending on what type of organization structure we choose to go with, centralized or decentralized, the county committees to also have an attendance policy, then we can set an example in how we handle things for them. So I like this policy. I think there might be some discussion over the proxy exemption. That's the very last line that we could have as far as how we see that going. I know there are members on this committee who have a lot of personal things going on that might benefit from being able to send a proxy in their place from time to time and not have it count against them. That's a discussion that I think we should have. But generally, I think the attendance policy is something we need to adopt. We need to adopt outright. I think I would even say that 3 meetings is a little too lenient. 3 consecutive meetings, we only mandate to meet twice a year. So at 3 meetings, you're missing a year and a half of meetings. That might even be too lenient. But I think the policy in regards is something we should adopt. So that's my debate, and that's what I'll add to the discussion.
Bob, your hand was up next.
Yeah, 2 things. I guess I agree with Mac that we should model it after the Democratic National Committee, and also suggest that county committees model after what we do. And then Judy had raised the issue of accessible meetings. I know our Raleigh County Committee has met in some inaccessible upstairs places in restaurants, which part of that's because we can't find any other place that seems like a good place to meet, but we have to figure out if that's what the requirements are going to be for that, and how to deal with it.
Anything else, Bob?
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Selena, you're next.
Well, I very much support the attendance policy. I thought that before we started to actually devise a policy, either one similar or exact like the DNC, I think it's important for people to understand what the problems have been, and we've Mac alluded to a little bit that there have been people who were elected that never came to a meeting, and I don't know how much people understand about that, but it is not. I've seen this both on the state executive committee and on a county committee. where people with a lot of name recognition it's easy because you're on a ballot, it's easy for them to get elected, and people will either they themselves will do it and to get elected to just hold a seat. Maybe they'll send a proxy, maybe they won't. But they have different reasons for doing it. One, and Deb might talk about this a little bit, but you know, it's sort of it's a personal trophy to somebody to be on the state executive committee, and they just have a lot of investment in that, but not enough to actually go to any meetings. The one of the situations that I was aware of that really bothered me is that somebody, this was back in, I think, must have been, well, I don't know when it was 2018. And this gentleman had never been, I had never seen him at say executive committee meeting prior to that. And then he was on the ballot, and I went to talk to him to ask him to consider not running because, you know, for that reason. And he told me that he really liked to be a national delegate and to the national convention, and that it was easier to get elected to be a national delegate if you were already a state executive committee member. So that was his reasoning. And again, didn't come to any meetings. One of the things that I saw in Fayette County that really bothered me was in 2018, a gentleman was elected. He, you know how you're supposed to have elections the very first meeting. And basically he only stayed on just so that he could cast the vote for the person that he wanted for chair, and then he immediately resigned. Now, all of that is perfectly legal. Okay, it's perfectly legal. It was perfectly within the bylaws to do. But and I'm sure if other people, I think, you know, if other people want to talk about potential abuses, we don't want to make an attendance policy so hard and so strict that it's cumbersome for the person who really does want to be involved but has other obligations. And I think what Judy said, we do have to make sure that there is good notice for people, enough advance notice for people to come to meetings, especially if we're going to ask people to start traveling to meetings. But I think that having that balance of making it accessible or being lenient enough that people you know, have lives that they might not be able to make every meeting, and being generous enough with that, but at the same time trying to eliminate ways that people could abuse the system. And the bottom line is we want people, active, interested people, to show up to meetings and to do the work. And you know, there is anyway, there's a lot of work to do, and we want people doing that. So those are my thoughts. And I also have, I do have a thought that I'll share a little bit later about what an actual attendance policy might look like. But I'll be quiet for right now. Thank you.
Deb?
Well, you know, we had that issue here. The issue that we are speaking of was from Mercer County. The person I ran against, or my seat on the DEC, was occupied by a woman who had held the seat for 6 or 8 years and had never gone to a meeting. So the way I got inspired to run was being her proxy when a proxy was demanded one time. I was her proxy. When I went to the meeting, I thought, oh, I need to be here. So I think county committees are going to model their bylaws after our bylaws. We do now here in Mercer County. Our bylaws are the state bylaws. And so at the county level, I think we need to have some flexibility. And I don't think the rules should be hard and fast, 3 meetings and you got to hit the road. Because several of our members they work outside of the county. And so sometimes they miss because they're at work at 6:30 and the meeting here starts at 6:30. And we're in Mercer and they're in McDowell, and it's an hour drive over the mountain to get here, so they miss. But they still contribute, and we appreciate their interest. They try to zoom in the car and catch the meeting. We also have one member who has 4 kids. They're all in sports. So his dad comes as a proxy to every meeting. His dad is here. So I just think we ought to build in some flexibility, or make it plain to the county committees that they can write their own bylaw article about attendance to fit their need. And I also feel that being on the state Democratic Executive Committee is a huge honor. And with it comes a lot of responsibility for the work that we do there. And so maybe we ought to be stricter at the state level than we are at the county level. I don't know.
All right, thank you, Deb. Let me just open up, because I've also got my 2 cents to kick in here. And is there anybody who hasn't spoken to the motion yet that would like to? And if not, then we'll do a second round of discussion, starting with Judy. Okay, so since I haven't spoken to this yet, I'll go ahead and speak to it right now. A couple thoughts. So I think first is I agree, attendance policy, absolutely necessary. Deb, I think you actually said it very well, with it being on the state executive committee in particular is a big honor. You know, there's only 68 duly elected positions across the whole state, and four for each Senate district. So like using my district as an example, it's Monongalia and Marion mostly. I mean, it's most of the county, but not all of it. But that's, you know, Fairmont, Morgantown, all the places in between. That's 4 people in that whole area. So I think the least we can do is say, hey, you ran for this, you got it. Like, you're required to attend within reason. And I think the having proxies available, and also having ways to, you know, having an attendance policy that doesn't mean miss 1 meeting and you're gone. I think those are all things that we can and should do. I don't know if I love the idea of making it, quote, 3 consecutive meetings. I think Max said it well, like, the state committee is only mandated to meet twice a year, although we could also change that, I think, later. And I think, or unless that's in state code, I can't remember. But, you know, even if we're meeting once a quarter, which I think is a good, healthy meeting schedule, especially if most of them are going to be virtual, so it's not a huge burden to get people to like travel, you know, every couple months for a meeting. But I think that like 3 consecutive meetings, because then you could just go to every 3rd meeting and never like show up again. So like if you miss 2 meetings and go to the 3rd, miss 2 meetings, go to the 3rd, you are going, you know, you're not missing 3 consecutive meetings, but you've still gone to 2 meetings over the last 2 years, which I don't love that. So my idea, I think I would advocate for making it 3 meetings during your term. Because then if you have a full 4-year term, you know, that means you can only miss 3 out of like 12 meetings. Or if you got appointed halfway through a term, it's a little murkier there, because maybe you only have 6 meetings in your term and you can miss like 3 of them. But I think I would probably advocate for making it not a consecutive system, because I think that can easily be exploited. It should be like total. And I do like having proxies count, but I don't like having proxies count for attendance. And the reason for that is because, and we've seen this multiple times, we're even seeing it now, a person can get elected and send a proxy for every single meeting with no consequences. And if you're going to get elected to a seat and send a proxy to every meeting for 4 years, then the person you're sending should have been the one on the ballot, not you. So I think having proxies not count for attendance makes sense to me, where, and if we say you miss 3 meetings in a term, you're out. We're affording some flexibility, we're allowing for proxies, but we're doing it in a way that it can't really be exploited or abused, which I think is, you know, the whole purpose of having like a good policy for attendance and for proxies. So there's my perspective on that. Judy?
Shane,
Oh.
hold on, Shane, let me just ask you a clarifying question. When
Mhm.
you say, I think I understand what you mean, but when you say not count for attendance, you're saying not count for attendance policy. You're not saying not count for attendance for quorum at that meeting.
Right. Like, yeah, for
Okay.
the sake of the using the language here in the DNC bylaw, right? Proxies shall not be counted at any meeting for the purpose of meeting the minimum. Oh, so they don't count proxies for quorum in the DNC?
No, they do. But what this is saying is they don't count towards the person that was elected. Their attendance.
Oh, okay. I was reading the word minimum level of attendance as quorum, but I see minimum level attendance is referring to their expected minimum. Okay, I get it now. Yeah. So yes, Selena, to answer your question, yes, proxies should count for quorum, but not for a person's individual attendance requirement. Judy, go ahead.
Okay, on the attendance thing, for one thing, I think in the process of doing this, we need to kind of segregate some of this stuff out for county. Make it county bylaws, because not all counties have their own bylaws. They follow the state. And most counties have monthly meetings. So missing 3 consecutive meetings for a county is a reasonable thing. As far as the proxies go, in our situation up here, we had a person that ran to give their proxy to somebody, and the reason that somebody wasn't on the ballots because they were the wrong gender. So the person got elected, has never been to a meeting, but gave his proxy to this other person so that they could attend every meeting. So they're on the committee because of being a proxy, and this guy has never attended. So I kind of, I think that he needs to at least show up. If we're going to do the proxy thing like that, he needs to show up at least to some meetings.
Judy, anything else on that?
No.
Selena?
Yeah, I think that this makes sense. Several people, Judy and Deb, and I think maybe somebody else brought it up about the difference between county and state executive committee. And I agree with that, because like Judy said, counties are only required to meet quarterly, but a lot of them meet monthly. And so there's a lot, they have a lot of meetings, that sometimes 11, 12 a year times 4. So that makes sense that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense proportionally to have the same policy as the state executive committee, which only has, we're required to have I think we're supposed to have 2 in person and 2 Zoom. But anyway, what I would, so one thing, Shane, I think we need to do is to try to come to see, maybe take a straw poll and see if we're in agreement that county policy needs to be different from the state DEC. And then we also have to kind of keep in mind about caucuses and that sort of thing. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'm going to throw out is I kind of like the idea of if you miss 3, a policy, a state, and I'm talking about on state, 3 consecutive meetings, you're automatically resigned like that. You automatically, you're just resigned. But then also to avoid the, attend 2 and then, I'm sorry, miss 2, attend 1, that there would be an additional, and if you miss a total of, 5 or something like that. So I think that's fair enough, because there's only, 2 to 4 a year, and in a 4-year term, you should be able to, to meet that. So I'm going to throw that out as a possibility. 3 in a row is automatic, or a total of 5 at any point in a term.
Now, wouldn't a Zoom meeting count as a meeting?
Yes, it does.
Okay, well then, if we are required to have 2 physical and then 2 Zoom meetings in a year for state, then we have 4 meetings a year, not 2.
Yeah, I don't know that, hold on, I'm gonna have to pull it up. I'm pretty sure that's what it says.
Mhm.
I think Selena's referring to either the current bylaws or the state code. I can't remember. Probably the bylaws, which
Bylaws, it's not in the state.
It's
code,
not
that's all.
code. No, it's
Yeah.
not in code.
But it
It's in
mandates-
our bylaws.
I was gonna say the current bylaws, I think they only mandate 2 meetings a year. It's just that the custom has been to do like up to 4 meetings. And I know under Chair Pushkin, we seem to be meeting every like 3 or so months.
Which we should anyway.
Which kind of
No.
falls in line with that pattern.
But it does say, I'm pulling it up right now, but it does say, I think it's supposed to be 2 in person and then either 1 or 2, I think it's 2 telephonic or Zoom meetings. And, and of course we can change that. I mean, we're working on that. On the bylaws, so we can change it.
Selena,
Yes,
how often does the national committee meet?
twice a year.
So
Wow,
3 in
so
a
for the
row would
national
be a
committee,
year
you
and
can-
a half of not going.
Yep.
Yes.
But they come from all over the country, plus Puerto Rico, and
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true.
so they've got a lot further to come than we do.
Yeah, they're logistically, those meetings are a lot harder to pull together
Mhm.
than our in-person meetings would be, and certainly more difficult than our Zoom meetings. Matt, go ahead.
I feel part of me is I'm torn on the 3 consecutive meetings versus 3 total. I see where the compromise would be having a 3 in a row as an automatic and a number is a compromise. A specific total number is also an out automatically. But I feel like the wording of that could get very jargony. And I'm a parliamentarian who doesn't like jargon. I'm very anti-lawyer jargon in that regard. And I would worry about the technicality of writing something like that. I feel like the bylaws should be very direct. They should be very concise. So I feel like in terms of how I feel about that camp, it should be a number of meetings total. I don't think if you miss 3 meetings and you're automatically resigned, if you miss 3 in a row, you miss 3. So it covers that in much simpler language. So I would probably cut down on the amount of language and just leave it at how many meetings missed total in a term of office or a session equals an automatic resignation. The other side of this is a discussion. There's another point that's been brought up several times, and that is, do we want to make mandated rules for the county committees? And this is a question of, do we want a strong centralized committee at the state level, or do we want a decentralized committee? And this is something that's kind of been the underlying theme, and I think this is the first opportunity to test how people feel on that. I am generally of the opinion that the state committee should be a stronger entity than the counties. And I sometimes believe we should have higher standards than the national committee. And the reason that I believe that is I believe that strong central small organizations at the top tends to lead to a level of corruption that we've seen throughout history. And very decentralized organizations tend to get nothing done. So I feel having the state, that sort of middle management, we're not the national party, but we're not the counties, be the strongest entity in the party. I feel that lends itself to some level of balance between those 2 points of view. So I would encourage some I would lean into the camp of we should have higher standards for the state committee. And we should, which could be met by getting rid of the 3 consecutive meetings and say, if you miss 3 total in a term, you're out. That is a higher standard than the national. But at the same time, giving some guidance, maybe not explicitly making the rule for our county committees, giving our county committees some room to wiggle, to say, hey, we meet 12 times a year. If you're making 75% of those, you're good. But give them some guidance on some instances where it is so egregious that they have to consider those rules. I think that would be an appropriate way to handle that situation. So I would encourage this idea of we take a stronger centralized committee role on this. And people are willing to, I'm willing to negotiate, compromise on that, but that's where I feel on the issue is this is one area where I feel we should strengthen the central state executive committee and give some guidance to our county committees is in attendance. So that's my take. I release the floor.
All right, let me get Judy and Deb, and then let me take a straw poll of the group for a couple of these things that we're talking about. Because I think that's going to be the easiest way for us to figure out where our consensus is in a timely way, so we can get to the other stuff on the agenda as well. Judy, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's kind of short. To say 3 absences over a 4-year period of time, I mean, even the most loyal of us, I don't think would be able to stand up to that, because you get sick or you have a family member, for whatever reason, you might miss. And 3 and 4 years, or you're out. I just don't think that that's workable. Because there's just too many variables that go on that. But that's just my personal opinion. But I think that it's too loose. But it makes it too hard on the people, because there are things that come up where people have to miss, and it's not their fault. I yield.
Deb?
So I think the state committee setting the standard for the counties is an excellent idea, because counties aren't always going to do the work of writing their own bylaws. And if they do, you could come up with 55 different sets of bylaws. It's going to be a mishmash out there. So I think Mac is right in saying that we need to set the standard kind of strictly. And I don't know if we can require the counties to adopt our bylaws or suggest strongly that they do. But I think for continuity and consistency's sake, so that everybody's singing off the same page, we need to consider how strict we want to be in our bylaws, how strict we want to be in asking the counties to adopt them, and consider, do the counties need wiggle room built in since we meet more frequently? That's all I got to say. All right, I yield.
All right, let me get Mac and then we'll straw poll.
I apologize. I just wanted to rebuttal. I wasn't saying that the county committees need to be held to that same 3 attendance policy. Again, if they're meeting 12 times a year in 4 years, that's 48 meetings. That would be an absurd standard. I agree with you, Judy, on that. But even if we go to quarterly meetings in a 4-year term, that's only 16 meetings. I think asking for 80% attendance, which missing 3 of the meetings would put you at an 80% attendance. Asking for you to meet an 80% attendance rate, I think that is a high standard, yes. But again, it's an honor position.
Or during your term.
Yeah, on your term, yeah. And that's if we go to quarterly. If we leave it at 2 mandated meetings a year, that's let's see, that's 2, 4, 6, 8 meetings. Missing 3 of those, that puts you at asking for a 60% attendance rate. That's still a high standard. But the idea is this is a position of honor. You are asked to serve, you volunteered to serve, you are a public servant, a representative. I think asking for an 80% attendance rate 80% attendance rate, you're still doing better than most of your congressional members. So I think 80% is a fair number there. So I would stand by the 3 number, but I'd be willing to go to 4 and make it 75% if we go to quarterly meetings in a 4-year term. But I wanted to clarify that I wasn't saying we should apply that to the counties, because that's an absurdly high standard. And I agree with that. Asking people to attend 45 of 48 meetings is, yeah, that's ridiculous. So.
Mhm.
Okay,
I
Bob,
I
then me,
just
then
add,
Stoffel.
I like Selena's idea of having both a consecutive limit and a total limit, like 3 consecutive misses would make you resigned, or 5 total misses would make you resigned. But I think those numbers need to depend on what we wind up saying the number of meetings should be. And obviously it's going to be different. I agree with Mac, it should be different for the counties. We probably need to have something that specifically says that counties can set their own attendance and requirements.
Okay, Maria, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a quick question that might help resolve some of this, but I know also that it's kind of backing into it because some of the rules around this don't exist. So my question is, could we make it a percentage of meetings? But then the way that I'm also refuting my own question or my own point is that there isn't really a standard necessarily set for how many meetings, or you know, as Selena brought up, we may change that to of what the actual number is. So that might complicate it because we can't really do a percentage to the standard before we've decided on the standard. But that could be a way to help cover and have some uniformity across state and county if we wanted that. But I also really agree to Mac's earlier point about having the state really set the standard and be kind of the leader in this topic. And also this is a big responsibility, right? Like a point I wanted to bring up earlier too is we are currently undergoing a process of making this a more kind of transparent and inclusive and open process through the rewriting of these bylaws. So we would hope that, you know, people would want to have an intentional presence on the state executive committee. So I'm generally supporting an attendance policy, also offering a percentage as a solution that could work, but it might be something we have to table a little bit on the actual decision of it until we have a standard set.
So my perspective on the issue with counties, and I'm saying this as a county chair, I absolutely think counties should be empowered with more flexibility. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether or not that we should put like some guidelines for counties in the bylaws, because currently right now there is nothing. And like the counties just kind of loosely follow the state bylaws, but the state ones have portions that are specific to them. Like, you know, for example, the existence of a second congressional district vice chair is not a thing that you have on a county committee, but you have it on the state committee. So following the state bylaws loosely, I think, is problematic. But I don't want the state bylaws to be so restrictive that it kind of chokes out the county committees. And, you know, because one size fits all approach at the county level doesn't really work. So I think that's what I would like. That's kind of where my feelings are, I think, on that. Let me get a straw poll of the group here, just so we can get some sort of actionable data. So is there anybody who is opposed to adopting an attendance policy? Let's start there.
I'm sorry?
Is there anybody, I have my hands in front of my mouth. Is there anybody who's opposed to adopting an attendance policy of some kind?
Nope.
Okay, so there's no objection there. Is there anybody, how do we feel about and to Maria's concern, I don't know that I want to necessarily ascribe numbers or percentages to it right now. I'm kind of comfortable just talking about this broadly and saying like, are we okay with saying if you miss X number of meetings that you're removed? Like, we could talk about what X would be later, especially once we put it in the context of how many meetings will the state committee be mandated to have, or how many do we expect them to have? But like, I think we're looking at the concept right now so much, and we're not really litigating the difference between 80% and 60%. That's where I think we are right now. So is there anybody who would be opposed, or how many people are opposed to having, if you miss X number of meetings, let's say consecutive, if you miss X consecutive meetings, it's considered a resignation. Is there anybody who is opposed to that kind of a statute? Okay, then who is opposed, if any? Mac, are you raising your hand in opposition?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with your point earlier that I feel that putting consecutive in writing it creates a technicalist's abuse. So I don't like the idea of someone doing missing 2, attending 1, missing 2, attending 1. So my objection would come to the consecutive. That's where I am, but I'm willing to be the minority and give up on that as well.
Well, unless that does lead to my next straw poll question, then what if we have a X consecutive meeting rule and we add the disclaimer or X or Y meetings total? Because I think that was Selena's original suggestion, where we say X consecutive and X is probably 3, and Y would be some number of meetings or some percentage, but we say that if you miss a total of meetings, then that's a resignation as well. Is there anybody who is opposed to that measure? Okay, I'm hearing no objection. Mac, would that hypothetically mitigate the concern that you expressed?
I would be willing to compromise to that, yeah.
Okay.
Could you just restate that a little? I'm just in terms of my notes. Could you restate what we just agreed to, Shane?
Yeah, that was me saying, is there anybody who would be opposed to adopting a statute in the bylaws that says, members are removed or they're considered resigned if they miss X consecutive meetings and they miss Y overall meetings? And X and
Okay,
Y
that's
might
what I
be a
thought.
percentage, it might be a number, but there is some sort of a expectation.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Shane,
Okay.
we haven't talked at all about health exceptions. Is that something we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could. I guess if we're looking at the state level, there's one meeting every 3 months. So to miss 3 consecutive, you'd have to be sick for about 9 months.
Or
We're talking about like an individual basis.
have recurring sicknesses?
I would say that Bob's take is very good considering the high rate of chronic illness that we suffer as a state. And those are usually debilitating illnesses such as cancer, Crohn's, etc. I think that's a fair consideration to have as an exemption, and I'm going to give some credence to his point.
Yeah, and we have an aging population too, so.
Maria?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a really good point, Bob, because we were talking earlier about different contexts that we can't, assume of people, but maybe we can have a disclaimer in there, something like members who miss more than X meetings, whatever we decide it is later on, may submit written, request to, to, I don't know the exact language, but essentially like asking for permission to miss, or maybe, with certain approval, their proxy that they send could count towards their attendance policy. I know this is getting a little, I don't know the best way to do it. I see Selena's hand up too, but maybe just saying, in special circumstances, they may submit written approval and, may ask the committee for a leave of absence or something of that sort.
Selena, go ahead.
All right. So I'm not real thrilled about this because I think that that's the reason I wanted it to be lenient, us to have a system lenient enough that, it would, like, your absences would be those, that there would be real reasons that people would miss. I think the potential problem with having an exception for health is that it would be just really, really easy for people to abuse that and say, oh, I was sick. And I don't think that so then how are we going to enforce that? Are we going to ask people for doctor's excuses? I mean, I don't think that we really want to do that. And I don't know. I think if we do that, we might as well not have an attendance policy, because anybody you're not going to be able to kick anybody off, because people will just say, I was sick. And unless we're going, and really, I mean, imagine that you're the chair of the party. Are you going to demand doctor's excuses from people? I mean, I just don't think that there's any way that we can really enforce that. I just think that the policy should be lenient enough that it's reasonable that, some people will need to miss because they are sick or unable to. And of course, if they're so chronically ill that they can't participate, perhaps that would be the best thing, is for them to resign and for somebody else to be in there, but I think anyway, so those are my general thoughts on it.
Well, let me speak to this briefly because I haven't spoken to it yet. I think I kind of agree with what Selena is saying. If only because, like, I want us to have an attendance policy, and we have the freedom to create an attendance policy. But I think it should be firm yet lenient. And I think if we put ourselves in the territory of, like, demanding doctor's excuses from people for missing, something about that just makes me, like, I'm kind of uncomfortable in that we'd say, okay, it won't count towards your attendance, but we need to see your medical records. And something about that just makes me really uncomfortable. But Bob, go ahead.
That makes me uncomfortable too. I don't know if there's any kind of an answer that's sort of sensible and simple. But what I'm thinking is, and maybe I should make this in the form of a motion, is that we should appoint a 3-person group to actually draft language, because just talking about it vaguely, and then bring that language back next time, and so there's actual numbers in there to consider, and an actual wording, because as we just talk about it, it gets more and more fluffy in terms of how it's structured.
No, I agree with that. And that's actually exactly what we're going to do, I think. And we have to figure out, I guess, like you said, it would be a motion. But all of this open discussion we're doing right now, and the back and forth and the haggling and whatever, all of this will guide the people that are going to draft this section and then bring it to us in 2 weeks for the next meeting. So yeah, that's exactly what I think we should be doing. Ray, go ahead, sir.
Folks, how you are doing? And I apologize for being late.
It's all good.
Okay. I want to say that we're all adults here. We know what we're doing. This is a new day in the Democrat Party. There should be no reason why should be some sort of attendance policy. Granted, we all get sick sometimes. I get that. I feel that, should be respectful. Let's say within 48 hours. I mean, if you're going to be sick, then let somebody know. I don't believe that we as a group of people are at a situation where we're going to keep saying, I'm sick, I can't attend. I don't believe in that. I believe right now, I don't believe that attendance policy will be in place, or should be in place. But I believe that we are diligent enough, and we are more focused in getting this Democrat Party together, because again, this is 2023. 2024 is coming real fast. We have to get our shit together, and that's what we're trying to do now. I don't feel that we should really harp on this attendance policy too much. But if we have to, let's come up with something real quick and let's move to the next thing on the agenda. I'm done.
All right, thank you, Ray. I'm trying to think where we were. I guess other discussion on, I was straw polling everybody, but I think I've done all the straw polling I can do on this. And we could move right to proxies, which is kind of related.
Could you straw poll on that health issue if people want to have an exception for health, or just have it lenient enough that we wouldn't have to do that?
Yeah, so let me do that. So if you want like a firm healthcare or health exemption in the bylaws, go ahead and like put that, raise your hand, I guess.
I think
And
Ray's
if you're
hand is
more-
raised from prior. Ray,
Yeah, it was. So I know Ray put it back up. So Ray is in that boat along with Judy. And then who would be in favor of a policy that has some lenience for, maybe it's like the 3 versus 5, like 3 consecutive or 5 total, but there is some lenience in there that could be used for like health or whatever the case may be. Okay, I'm seeing more hands on that, and that's where I would also throw my support as well. Okay, so then let's talk proxies here. And just to give people an idea of time, since we started 15 minutes late, I'm okay with us going until about 6:15, maybe like 6:20. So that would still be like an hour and a half. But we set up to 2 hours for a meeting, but a hard cutoff at 2. But I think that the goal will be, I think, 6:20. And if we have to postpone some of this for the next round, that's okay. We're just getting started hammering out our process here. But let's talk proxies here briefly. And I think proxies is a little more simple. We do have a proxy policy currently in there, and proxies are submitted in writing. Is there anybody who thinks that proxies should not be allowed? Yeah, I didn't think so, but I just wanted to check.
It's not allowed to what?
Not allowed to have proxies, like no proxy, eliminating.
Oh,
proxy.
no, you should be allowed to do that because you can tell your proxy how you want them to vote.
Exactly. So no, I didn't think there would be objection to that, but let's, does anybody think proxies should be unlimited, as in you can send one proxy, you can send a proxy every meeting for the next 4 years with no ramifications?
No.
Okay, because that's how.
Well, if we put in a right, but if we put in an attendance policy, that would, I think people should be able to send in a proxy for any meeting that they want to. However, if they mess up on whatever attendance policy that we put in place, then they'll just be removed.
And I'm trying to think here. I'm looking at the other stuff here. So clarification of who can be a proxy. So what that means is, because right now the proxy policy as it's written in the bylaws is very vague. It's like for proxy, you're like, if you're from one of the 68 seats, then it's obviously, a member of that Senate district. But if you're like an affirmative action at large member versus an officer versus an organization president, it's really unclear like who you can send as your proxy. So I think we need to, and this is probably going to get very weedy language that we, don't have to mitigate right now. But I think that my perspective is we would need to be very clear about who we are, like for each position or for each type of position. There would need to be some sort of a process that you use for, like, for example, if you're a 2nd congressional district vice chair, then your proxy must be from the 2nd congressional district. Or if you are a member of the president of the Young Democrats, then your proxy needs to be a member of the Young Democrats. Like I think that language does not exist, and I think that's language that we need to put in there. But let me just open up for, I guess, let me just highlight these 4 questions here, just for sake of time and ease. And then let me just get anybody to speak to any of these that they want to speak to.
Okay, the comment about, like with the committees, like the Young Democrats, if you're gonna miss, your proxy would have to be a member of the Young Democrats. I mean, they can't have 2 votes. So you wouldn't be able to have somebody that is already on the committee. I would agree that you would still need somebody that is young to take that proxy, but I don't see how you could have somebody that's already a member of the Young Democrats be your proxy, because then they couldn't vote for you. Does that make sense?
No. If I can't figure out what you're saying when you say they could be voting twice.
That I said they can't vote twice. If you're getting somebody that's already on the same group, the Young Dems, if you have to miss a meeting and you need a proxy, if you get a proxy from the Young Dems,
To the young, to a Young Dem, you mean?
yeah, somebody out of the same group that's already a member. If your proxy is already a member, then they get 1 vote. They can't vote for you and then have their vote too.
Oh, I disagree. I think that if Shane is a Young Dem and he's already on the committee, and I mean, I'm not the Young Dem chair, but if I was the Young Dem chair and I was missing the meeting, I should be able to give my proxy to Shane, and he should have his regular vote and my proxy vote.
Yeah, I agree with Selena.
And that's how they do it at the DNC, and that's really how we've done it now. That you can hold, like if you're a member, you can hold somebody's proxy, but the question is, how many proxies can you hold? Can you hold unlimited number, 1, 2? I mean, I think we need to have that discussion, but I think it's reasonable for Shane to have my proxy and his vote.
Well, and also like the way it works is like, because we actually encounter this now with County Chairs Association. So County Chairs Association has a vote on the state executive committee. I'm president of the County Chairs Association, but I also already like hold a different seat. So I give my proxy for state executive committee meetings to one of the officers of County Chairs Association, because they're not representing me, they're representing the organization. So like I have the option to sit in the seat for County Chairs Association, but I choose not to because I have another seat that I hold instead. But the organization is able to send somebody in their place, which is why like Tammy or Michael is that person. But that's language we don't have in bylaws right now. So this is a section where we would need to do a lot of drafting to really clarify this.
Clarification,
Yeah. Mac, I'm going to get to you, but Ryan, I see your hand up too. Did you want to clarify something about the committee?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Just piggybacking off of what Selena was discussing, just to point out that the DNC, the only people that can hold proxies are DNC members. So for instance, we weren't able to have our chair or vice chair attend our February DNC meeting. So those proxies had to be held by other DNC members. Just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Ryan. Mac?
There are 4 principal. There's 4 principles of parliamentarianism. One is that there's majority rule, there's minority rights, 1 person, 1 vote. The thing is a proxy should be clearly written instruction. It is a good proxy should give clear written instructions so that the member who is absent will and rights as a member are carried out on their behalf in the assembly. Proxies are supposed to be well written. If there is an agenda that has been sent out and someone gives in a proxy, they should instruct their proxy on how to vote on the issues as part of that proxy. I'm while it shouldn't matter who holds the damn proxy, they should be carrying out that person's will. And I think it's more a question of how do we want to clarify, do we want to put a limit on how many members a person, how many proxies a person can hold? Do we want to put clarifications on the overlap between, does someone need to be in my district to carry out my representative orders? Those are the questions here. Yes, I think we should have proxies, and I tend to stand on, it should be the right of a member to designate in writing their will and to assign that designation to someone that they trust to carry it out. And I believe that falls under members' rights. So that is how I would answer these questions. But at the end, yes, we should have proxies. One thing that we should have is they should be well written. And then we can talk about a limit on how many proxies one person can have, because I think that's a protective right of us as an organization, as a society. If you have a leader of, say, a organizational caucus within the state executive committee, say they form a clique or a group, a voting group, and the members of that group, just 30 members, give their proxy to one person. Yeah, that person might be carrying out their will, and they might be the best person to carry that out on their will. But that is an abuse inside the organization of those rights, and we have to protect the organization. So I think the question of how many proxies we should have a person can carry, that is the key question here, more so than anything else. And I believe that limit should be no more than 3.
3 proxies or 3 like total, like, does the person count themselves in that total?
They can hold 3, up to 3 proxies. I think I could effectively balance it on a well-written proxy. I think I could effectively represent the needs of 3 other members. But you start getting 5, 10, 20, that's a massive problem, and it's a massive abuse of the rule that endangers the organization. So that's about where I stand on that, is we should clarify how many proxies a person can hold,
That
more
would
so.
be a total of a maximum of 4 votes.
Yeah.
Okay. Other open discussion on this, I feel like, here's my perspective on this. I feel like a lot of this is actually kind of common sense. By, like, for example, clarifying proxies for the officers, diversity at large, recognized organizations, political subdivision, meaning, like, if you're live in Senate District 12 and you're a committee member from Senate 12, your proxy must come from Senate 12, which, I think all that. So, like, this to me feels very common sense and not very controversial. I think the one, as Max said, I think the one really big question here is how many proxies can a person hold? And do we want to put a limit on that? So let me straw poll the group here. Should we have a limit on proxies?
Yes.
So I guess speak up if you feel like we shouldn't have like, do you feel like we should have a limit on proxies? Like, just raise your hand, chat, whatever you want to do.
Aye.
Okay, I think that's everybody. Was anybody opposed to that?
I was just confused on how it was asked. You said if we were opposed to having a limit.
I asked in a confusing way. So let me just ask directly. Do you think there should be a limit?
Yes.
Okay. And do we feel like 3 is an appropriate limit? So let's say, does everybody agree with 3? And if you don't, say higher or lower?
Lower.
I wasn't married to 3. I'm fine with it being lower.
Lower.
Deb says lower.
3 is a lot. Lower.
I'm fine with 3.
Okay, Ray says fine at 3.
4 is fine too.
Bob, what?
3 is fine for me, but lower would be fine too. I wouldn't say 2 or maybe even 1.
Does anybody object to 2?
I do.
I do.
Okay, so Ray, do you think it should be, are you sticking firm on 3?
Sticking on 3.
And Selena, what about you?
Yeah, I think holding 1 and I don't know where, but somewhere in DNC stuff, it says that you can only hold 1 proxy. I think I don't know where it is, but I think that there's something in there. Now, I don't think that that's like something that we have to follow, but when you think about what it takes to be a proxy, and I really like what Max said, was talking about in terms of members' rights, because I'd really thought about these proxies being in terms of, district and stuff like that. But I think I kind of like the idea of like, it would be much simpler and it would be very fair to members if people could just pick their proxy statewide. As long as you're a Democrat in West Virginia, you pick your proxy. And I think we don't have to worry about too much abuse if we're going to put in the attendance policy, because they could only do that 5 times or whatever we decide on. So I really like that, but I do think it's an awful lot of power for somebody to go into a meeting holding, 4 votes. So I think holding 1 is enough for a person to do personally.
Agreed.
All right, Mac.
If I could take the opportunity to maybe change your mind on that. There is a clarification in both Robert's Rules of Order and in the current bylaws that say proxies must be well written. Now, from a parliamentarian standpoint, that means give clear direction to the extent in which the person acting as proxy has discretion or has to carry out the will of the person that they are representing. It might be to our interest, no matter what we set the actual proxy number to define what a well-written proxy should include. But a well-written proxy, a well-written proxy should not give more power to the person holding it, because that person is a vessel for the member who gave them that proxy. They are merely there to articulate to the assembly that person's wishes. Usually it's just in the form of a vote. Occasionally there can be a pre-written statement included. But I would say that a proxy doesn't so much give a well-written proxy doesn't give more power to a single person than they otherwise already have. Because a well-written proxy, say they go abusive, and we take the worst part of it, and they try to take their 3 proxies and their vote and sway, try to go against these 3 members' wishes and vote them a different way and sway an issue. A well-written proxy is evidence that they did that. Otherwise,
and those are very good points, but the fact of the matter is some things come up at meetings that that there's a motion that you don't know it's going to be made, and your proxy might not be able to prepare you for that. Now, if it's like, who's running for office, who you vote, that's one thing, but there's a lot of like discussion, and like just even in our discussion that we're having here, we hear different ideas and we change our mind. And I understand your point, and I think it's a fair point, but people are, I think it's fair for people to have a proxy that says, I give full discretion to this person because I trust them to hear the content. But I just think I think it's an awful lot of power, and I think personally, I think 1's enough. But
well, I see, that's where I think we disagree, and I think full discretionary proxies are not well-written proxies. I think at the very least, a well-written proxy should address the things that are on the agenda. On item 1, I would vote nay. And you don't have to give reasons, but you could on a well-written proxy so that the person who's representing you could debate on your behalf. But But I believe that proxies that give carte blanche are not well-written proxies. That
Well,
would be
that's the sticking point, right? Because you have instructed and uninstructed as the current proxy form is written. But uninstructed proxy, I feel like, is basically carte blanche anyway, because you can't anticipate every single motion or nomination that's going to be made in a meeting. Like, you can address what's on the agenda, sure, and if there's like a big vote on it, like you can, but you can't address every single little thing that could happen in that meeting. But right now, our proxy system is instructed and uninstructed, and I think maybe that needs to be clarified a little more. Ray, I see your hand up.
Yeah, as far as with the proxy, and I misunderstood my mistake. As far as proxy, and I'm kind of conjoining it with the attendance. And I did say 3. I want to change my vote to 1. That's all.
Gotcha. So you're saying you're embracing one like you can carry up to 1 proxy.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Maria?
Just a quick question to clarify. I know we addressed this earlier, but I wasn't sure if we had decided. If someone sends a proxy, does that count towards them not technically attending the meeting?
So that would be said in the attendance policy, not the proxy policy, but I think
Right.
we did. Did I straw poll the group on that? I don't remember.
No, not on that.
I don't
particular
believe
thing.
so.
Well, then maybe I should then. So let me straw poll the group here. For the purposes of an attendance requirement, not quorum, specifically attendance requirement, like for an individual person, should a proxy count toward like you attending that meeting? So who thinks that proxies should count for attendance? Which I assume means everybody thinks proxies should not count for attendance. Is that right?
Yeah,
proxy.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, then yeah, there's your answer, Maria. It would
Okay,
be.
I just wanted to clarify on that as we continued in this discussion. Thanks, Shane.
No, thank you. I didn't realize that I didn't poll the group about that. So thank you for catching that. We're gonna have to wrap up after this item because we're at 6:15, but any closing discussion on proxies? Okay, so we'll save equal. Who was that? Okay. So we'll save the equal division in the subcommittees for the next part, just to be mindful of time here, because I want to make sure we're wrapped up, in a time.
Shane, yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask this question, and I just got in the car, so I'm a little distracted. About proxies, do we want to have proxies be very specific to geographical or diversity or whatever, or do we want people to just, as long as you're a Democrat in the state, you can assign somebody your proxy?
If they're in your district.
No, I mean, like, period. Like, Judy, like, you could make me or my husband your proxy. You don't have to, as long as, just make everybody have a proxy. Their proxy could be anybody in the state as long as they are a Democrat. Or do we want to keep sort of what we have now, which is geographical? You have to be within a certain geographical district, because I'm leaning towards just let people choose their proxy wherever they are based on who they trust. And I think that the abuse factor will be eliminated because of the attendance policy.
Mac, then Maria.
I agree with dissolving the specific requirements and making it just state Democrats. Again, this is a members' rights issue, and it comes down to a trust issue. It should be a member's right to pick who they trust to represent them. And just so they are a Democrat in the state, I think that's a high enough set, especially if we tighten up attendance and we we discuss the other aspects of it. So I agree with Selena on Selena, or I would lean in favor of it just being the Democrat from the state requirement for holding a proxy. My caveat would be that they should be instructed proxies. They should not be carte blanche. So that's my caveat on that issue. And I yield.
Maria?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I actually wasn't going to respond to that exact question, Shane, so it was kind of from before you had asked it. But just speaking to Ryan's point earlier about having any other voting member on the committee also be able to be a proxy. So I was going to say that if it required someone in your congressional district, or I'm sorry, your senatorial district to say senatorial district or another voting member, just so that you could make sure that someone in the room could speak on your behalf. So I was just going to say that if we stuck with the person from your district.
Sorry, I have a dog issue here. Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to keep him in check, but he's very noisy. So I'm just going to talk through it. Other discussion on this? Sorry, I'm trying. We have a lot of pets and they're disruptive.
I don't even hear him.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let me, okay, so we're gonna have to, like I said, we're gonna have to postpone the other stuff to next meeting just because of time. But let me, with our last couple of minutes here and before we adjourn, I want to sort of synthesize how we're gonna like take these next steps. Bob, you had mentioned before having like, a 3-person group start actually drafting like the provisions that we're talking about. And I think I would probably amend that a little bit to say that, or not even amend, but just clarify that everybody on this committee would have access to like the Google Doc where the it's being written so that we can see it in real time and be able to view it. But I do kind of like the idea of having certain people take dibs in the drafting so we don't have 8 people stepping on each other's toes. So if that's the process that we want to try, at least for this iteration, if we're going to try that for this iteration, then who would be those 3 people that would do the drafting? And I do not volunteer as tribute.
Well, I'm glad to help with that, but I agree very strongly that everybody, all the members of the committee need to have whatever, like Google Doc or wherever we're working on, everybody have access to it to be able to comment. And honestly, I have no issue with everybody having access to, to do it, because I know probably most people won't, but if they want to, they can, but at least be able to view and comment.
Well, let me just ask every individual person then, do you want access to edit the bylaw document? So Mac?
Yeah, and I would even volunteer as tribute to take a
draft.
point on writing.
Bob, how about you?
Yeah, I'd like access to suggest edits, I think, as opposed to having lots of people editing.
Judy?
Agreed with Bob. I'd like to have access to make suggestions.
Deb?
Yeah, I'd like access to comment and make suggestions. I think that would help the process, actually.
Maria?
Yes, I'd like access to comments and suggestions, but agree also that I'm in support of there being less authors who are doing the actual drafting.
All right, Ray, how about you?
Same, less authors. That way I won't get too mad and put some profanity in there. So yeah, that's author for me. Yeah, that's fine.
And then
Got to keep it PG.
Okay, so I will just take, I mean, I'll maybe edit or whatever. Selena, are you gonna, I think you should be one of the drafters. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'd like to do that, and I like that everybody is going to be able to comment. I like that a lot.
So we have Mac and Selena so far that are gonna be sharing the drafting while everybody else can view and comment and make suggestions. Bob, I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I'm gonna put you on the, are you okay with being able to edit as well? Since we said 3 authors and that would be 3.
Okay,
You just kind of volunteered you as tribute, I guess, but okay, so then one of the orders of business for the meeting on March 9th then is we'll be looking at like these completed sections. We'll look at the other items that we had on the agenda and we'll add some new ones. And I think we'll be able to run through this a little more quickly than before because we're just kind of getting our feel for how our process is going to work. Maria?
Yeah,
Shane,
I just had a clarifying question, really quick. I love the idea of a straw poll, and I really appreciate that you've really asked for people's input along the way, Shane. I appreciate the way that you're facilitating that process. I also, though, just want to flag, and I don't believe we should discuss this today, but maybe an agenda item for next meeting would just be around how we are going to gain consensus as a group, because as we get into more tricky material, we may not be able to, come to a place of agreement just by using straw polls. So I just kind of wanted to clarify our voting process, especially around contested issues, or, if it's 4 versus 4, how we're going to handle that. So I just wanted to clarify that at the next meeting.
No, I think we definitely should talk about that, especially because you're right, like straw polling everybody here, it felt really messy and I wasn't like, I even missed a couple of them. And I think we need, as we're having these open discussions and we're not very rigid in the way we're doing this, but we need a way to ascertain like what the group's consensus is. And we could do motion, seconds, and votes. I just think that's going to get really like, because then if somebody amends the motion and like, then all of a sudden we're really, really in the weeds on a committee that's focused on being in the weeds. So I agree with you. I think we need to like really clarify that. And how do we, if we do split 4-4 on something, how do we break a tie? That's a good question.
Thank
Matt
you.
Shane, whoops.
or Bob, yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
anything that doesn't have a majority loses, so we don't have to break the tie. A tie loses.
Okay, well, that makes sense then. Bob?
I just want to say that after saying I was available on the 2nd and 4th Thursday, it turns out that March 9th, I'm going to be flying back from Guatemala. I may be in the Atlanta airport at 6:30, but I may not be. So I may not be able to join the meeting next 2 weeks from yesterday.
Well, no,
Oh,
thanks.
that's one strike against you.
Is there what?
Yeah, get him.
It's a one-time issue, I think, for me.
No, Ray said it's a one strike against you.
One
I'm
strike.
joking, Bob.
Okay.
Actually, it's good that you brought that up, actually, because the 23rd, which is going to be our second meeting in March, I'm actually going to be out of town. So we'll have to figure out somebody to run the meeting on the 23rd since I won't be here. And I could zoom in, but to be honest, I'd probably rather not. I might just take the vacation time.
Right.
Deb and Mac, you had your hands up earlier.
I was going to suggest that maybe the guinea pigs could be the tiebreakers if we have a vote that needs a tiebreaker.
Okay.
There's a guinea pig that does stock exchange work, so I'm sure they're more than qualified. It's something about them.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask little War Machine over there, but yes, my guinea pig is named War Machine. But
Shane, also you shared a chart on the screen earlier, either the agenda or a chart. The agenda I had, but the chart I don't seem to be able to find on Google Docs. Is there some way to?
yeah, we'll get that shared out and we'll get that shared out and put that in the Google Drive folder.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's already in the folder or not, but if it's not in there, we'll put it in there. So yeah, everybody should have access to everything.
Sometimes found the folder and sometimes not when I go to Google Drive on my iPad, which is what I'll be using when I'm doing any traveling. We'll be gone.
Gotcha.
So.
Where is the Google Drive? What?
The
Page.
folder is called, it's the folder that Ryan set up. It's WVDP Rules and Bylaws Committee. So everything that we're doing document wise is going to be housed in there. And if it's not in there now, we can move stuff into it. But everything is, it looks like everything is in there right now, but I can double check. And Selena created some of these as secretary, so I can, double check with her and make sure we have the stuff in that folder.
I don't seem to be, I've gotten links from Ryan, I think, that I've used to get to it before, but it doesn't seem to show up unless I have a link in an email.
What you might want to try doing is go to drive.google.com. This is for everybody. When you're logged in, go to drive.google.com, and that'll bring you to like the main menu where you can see like the folders that have been shared with you. You might have to dig a little bit. But if you look under either shared drives or shared with me in the left-hand column, the folder should just be in there at all times for you.
Okay, well, I'm using the Google Drive app on the iPad, which should have it, right?
It should, yeah. You just have to, if you have like a hamburger menu or something in there, just look for the words either shared drives or shared with me, and then it'll be in a list of folders in that area.
Yeah, there's shared drives, or shared documents anyway. But
Hey,
I'm-
I just need to let you guys know that I have to jump off, but I just have to jump off. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's 6:30 anyway. We need to cut off, but just kind of doing a little bit of housekeeping before we go.
Okay, all right, I'm jumped off. Thanks.
See you later, Selena.
Mac, I see your hand up. You want to close us out?
Actually, I had 2 points. One was a point of inquiry. The other was a quick motion before we adjourn.
Okay, go
Or
ahead.
a question for the assembly. The point of inquiry is not this time because I'm not going to put more work on Selena. I do like the straw polls. If we do straw polls in the future, could the chair, making it easier on the drafters, have the straw polls and the results included in the minutes in the future? It wouldn't have to be in this set of meeting minutes, but in future meetings, I think that would be helpful for the drafters to have. So that's my first point. Let you rule on that.
No, that makes sense. Honestly, what I can do to make it a little smoother next time is why don't I have like a Google Sheet or a Google Doc like typed up where I can fill it out in real time, like as we're like when I say, okay, we're 7-1 on this issue, like I can write 7-1 on that sheet. That might help the straw polling to find consensus run a little more smoothly since we'll see it in front of us.
Yeah.
Then that might address what Maria brought up earlier about trying to streamline that process. That might be a step we take for next time and see if that makes it any better.
Yeah, I don't want to see them go. I do like that. And I think that's a quick way of putting us on a direction. My second question is to the assembly. Well, first to the chair and then to the assembly. We have 4 issues. We're going to have 2 come up in writing at the next meeting, and then we'll have 2 to discuss. Do we want to begin thinking about other topics to bring up so that we can move along this process fluidly? And if we do we want one of those topics to be effective notice? That's first to the chair, and if the chair doesn't have a problem with that, then to the assembly.
I think effective notice makes sense. And I would say as far as the other topics go, what I would ask everybody to do is to read through the old party bylaws. And if you see anything that is just like obviously we're gonna, make a new version and really strengthen them, by the end of this months long process. But if there's anything that needs patched like immediately, like in April, for example, let's get that on the agenda to talk about as soon as possible, because we're going to have to, I don't know when the next state executive committee meeting is going to be. I'm assuming April sometime.
I talked to Delegate Pushkin today, and he actually mentioned late April. Yeah, like maybe the 23rd or something like that. So it might be, and that kind of put on my radar. I meant to bring that up earlier, that we may want to have some sort of a progress report just to talk about some of what we've been discussing for the larger committee.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, especially if it is April 23rd, that would be very ironic, because our meeting is March 23rd. And yeah, April 23rd is a Sunday. So if that's the timeline that we're gonna have for the next meeting, then we have 1 and 2 more meetings, if we count the 23rd, to produce like updates to the bylaws, and then we have to get them to the state committee within 30 days so they can vote on it, or like 30 days in advance of the meeting. So if we had stuff done like on the 23rd and we sent it out to the committee members that night, I say I won't be here, but if we sent it out that night, then they would have 30 days to consider the changes, and then we could get like tangible progress on the current bylaws in April, and then have whatever we produce, ready to go for the fall. Does that kind of address what you were talking about, Maria? Okay.
I'd also like to volunteer to help put any materials together for like in prior, in preparation for that meeting, whether it's a PowerPoint or whatever we need help doing. That's something I feel like I could help by that point in time. So we can talk about that later, but that's something that was just on my radar.
No, we'll tag you in for that. I think a PowerPoint during the meeting to explain like the revisions would be hugely helpful. Okay, so I know we need to adjourn soon. Mac, I see your hand still up though. So let's have, let me give you one last word and then we're gonna move to adjourn.
Actually, I was going to ask, should it please the chair in the assembly, I'd like to move to adjourn.
Oh, look at that. All right. Motion by Mac to adjourn. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Maria. All right, any objection to adjourning?
No.
I didn't think so. Yeah, this has gone long enough, but thanks to Ryan and Katie for hosting us and sticking around. We won't take up any more of your Friday nights. Now we're moving to Thursdays, which, by the way, committee members, be aware that Ryan has set up a standing Zoom link for the second and third Thursday at 6:30.
Second.
Second and fourth Thursday of each month.
Okay.
So that would be the 9th and the 23rd in March, but the link is going to be the same for every meeting. So we won't have to actually register anymore. We will just have that link, that standing link for every meeting.
Is that the link we use this time, or will there be one registration and then after that it's the same?
Ryan? Do we have to register one more time, or is it?
It's going to be just a link. It's a link that we can share by email, but also I'm going to put a calendar invite up. It's a standing calendar invite for all of the dates.
Got it. Okay, and I see that you noted, yeah, that's a tentative date for the state committee. We won't count that as I mean, if we can have stuff done by March 9th to present, I think that's good. And then if we can add to it for the 23rd, that's good. But if the meeting happens to be before April 23rd, then we could, we can still produce the changes we've made up to the 9th. So we have one more meeting to get it right, if not two. Okay, well, then we stand adjourned until March 9th at 6:30, y'all. We'll see you in the Google Drive, I guess.
And
Okay.
thanks again, Ryan and Katie, for your help.
You all take care and be safe.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Ray, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Katie.
Bye.